Hi everyone, this is Bruno Gomes here, and this is the follow-up video to the unboxing. I told you I would assemble a kit, and I would do a video later to comment on the kit. And this is it. I just finished building it. This is the associated RC8B3.2, the new kit. Just came out, a few days ago, give or take. Building it, assembly went quite well. There are some very interesting details, at least for me. I've been away from the hobby for quite some time. I have the original RC8, and this is a big departure from it. First thing I noticed right away is, of course, the pillow ball suspension. The original RC8 was C-hub suspension. But I'm used to assembling pillow ball suspension. I have 110 touring car, nitro touring car, pillow ball suspension, so no problem. I will do a little analysis on the build, on the kit, the quality, ease of assembly, and maybe some tips from the top of my head, what I remember from building it. I like the plastics, they are very precise. I didn't need to use any shims on the axis here. On the differentials inside the boxes, I only needed to use one shim, I believe. I'm not sure if I used one or none in the center. I think I used one. Not sure. One or none. Everything fits tightly, snugly. I really like this detail of the screws, all or almost all the screws. Well, I see almost all the screws are M4. Almost all or all the screws. I think all the screws are M4. These are bigger screws, more plastic, so you can tighten them a little better. I think the plastics will end up lasting longer. You have more contact surface for the screws to grab on. I made some changes. The track I will practice mostly on. Due to this pandemic, regional and national races were all cancelled. I believe there will be some cups, but further down the road, closer to the end of the year. So local clubs will do some races, and the track I'll be racing on, it's has a lot of traction, has a lot of jumps. So I need to prepare my car to set it up for jumps and high traction surface. It has some off camber turns. You have to be extremely careful or you'll just roll over. I did change the pistons, the shocks. The original ones were molded. I didn't even take them from the plastic tree. So you have an option of in the kit of 4 tapered pistons, and basically not tapered, so standard pistons. I used also in here machined pistons, Delrin machined pistons, white, seminar holes, 1.2 in the front, 1.3 in the rear. I believe these are 8 holes or something. Don't quote me on that. I honestly don't remember. The holes on these ones are angled. These were advised to me. Basically, somebody told them to use them because with angled pistons and angled holes in the pistons, when you're jumping, it will actually pack more, so the shocks will hydrolock, if you know what I mean. So it will become tighter, thicker It's like if you had thicker oil when you're jumping, and this allows you to use thinner oil actually. So in the bumps you can absorb the bumps, okay, easily. But when you're jumping, it will pack more, so it will harden and allow you to absorb the jump better. So I'm using 1.2 in the front, 40 weight I believe, and 1.3 in the rear with the angle machine pistons. In terms of performance, I believe this is the most significant change. I also elongated a little bit the wheelbase, to give it some more stability. I just glued some weights, I believe 15 grams in the back, 10 grams in the front, so it rotates a little. You could use 30 grams on the rear to hold the rear more, but I don't want to hold it excessively. I like it to turn. Basically, so usually, in terms of differentials, I was told to use, usually, not for this track, but usually, 773, I believe, 3000. I'm using, absolutely crazy values. People told me I have 20k in the front, 15k in the center, and 7k on the rear. The track is really, high bite. This is why I'm using these thicker oils on differentials. I'm gonna try it. I'm going to check, how the car behaves, and if it is necessary, I'll change the oils. You can check here that I'm using some aluminum shims. I believe it's cap screws, right, that you call this. The cap screws, if it's not, I'm sorry. The cap screws that come in the kit are 24 millimeters long. If you want to use these aluminum shims, you have to find some 26 millimeter screws. Associated has them. I got them. And why did I do this? The cap screws, you have a lot of holes in here, and the holes are very close, and the surface area of the cap screw is a little bit smaller, so I'm basically widening the contact area to distribute, the load, in case of, an accident or whatever. It's, I don't know if it works or not, but at least it doesn't hurt. And I feel a little bit more confident. Also in the back, I use these screws here also with some aluminum shims, because of the same reason. Those are, holes are extremely close together, so I'm widening the surface area. There's one thing that I usually do in my cars, but I couldn't do in this one. I usually use the longest screw here. I put a big shim and an nylon nut, so in case of a big impact or some crazy whatever, some crazy shit, this just snaps off. I used to do this on other cars, but the thing is, you have no thread here, so you basically use a wrench in here and another one in here, and you counter tight them with a little Loctite, of course. That's pretty useful, pretty friendly, easy to tighten them well. But I try to find some of these pieces here alternatively, to see if I could screw, use a longer screw and the shim and the nylock, the nut. But I don't have anything that resembles anything like this. RC8, the RC8 equivalent, it's much longer, so it would completely mess up the angle. So I ended up leaving it there. Probably I won't have any issues, but it was just one thing, for peace of mind, that I would like to do. I'm using the bigger aileron, the wing support. The wing is soft, it will absorb, impacts better. Usually, some years ago, wings were, there were a lot of hard wings. I remember some J Concepts wings. I have used in my original RC8, for example. These are fine. We don't want too much downforce here, or else it will bind a lot the rear. Bind is not the best word. It will, the car will have a certain tendency to understeer and not turn as easily. Okay, that's what I meant. So in terms of the kit went well. All the carbon parts, I used some super glue just to seal off the carbon parts. If you notice here, my radio box and battery box, they all have they are sealed, completely sealed with silicone. I don't use switches. I use a direct plug. This is an XT60. I used to use DINs. These are cool too. Some people complain that they start losing a little bit of that grip, but you just need to put an X a wrench. I don't have an X here with me, but this is easy. You just you open up these pins just a little bit, and this plug will be just as strong, or even stronger, so it won't come undone. I'm using a LiPo here. As you can see, this is the balance plug. This is a 2500 LiPo from Opti1. These servos are high voltage servos, 20 kilograms. They are cordless. You see how easy I can just turn them just like this. Okay, very easy. I know they are fast. They have 20 kilograms, I know, in less than 0.1 seconds. I know it's less. I don't know exactly how much. I don't remember. This is a huge tip. Okay, everybody should be using. This is kind of like a failsafe. Okay, if you lose your battery, your connection, this is a mechanical failsafe. Okay, this will immediately shut down. Not shut down, but idle the engine. Okay, if you're going straight and you just lose radio or your battery comes unplugged, it will go straight into idle, and at least the damage will be much smaller or even non-existent. Okay, so this is a huge tip here, to use some rubber bands. These are quite small, but they are good. I'm using 3 rubber bands here. 2 would be more than enough, but I'm using 3 for extra security, in case one just blows off, and I still have 2. 1 will still help, no problem. Also here in the tanks, if you see here, I'm using some aluminum tape just to protect the tank a little bit from the heat. I also used a little bit not to protect it from the heat, but actually because the tank has to be a little loose and will hit some parts, so it's a little bit more protected. The tank should be like this. Don't over tighten your tank. Okay, it needs to be loose, because when you're going over bumps and all the regular parts of the track, it will absorb all that better. It will not transmit all that force to the tank, and it won't break it. It has to be a little bit resin. You don't have to do anything because it already comes like that. I'm using a longer fuel line. Longer fuel line. I like a little bit longer fuel line. It gives me a little bit more fuel, of course. I still didn't measure it, so I don't know if it's legal, but I will. I'm thinking of maybe putting a full filter, a small fuel filter down there, just for added security, added safety. The clunk inside the tank already is a filter. Okay, I'm still missing here the zip tie, the ball tank. Okay. And the oil filter here, of course. This is a brand new engine, Nova Rossi roll and southern ports. I still have to break it in. New pipe. This is a 9901. Okay, I'm sorry. You're seeing the numbers upside down, but you get the idea. This is a 41021. Header, most common. Okay. In the springs, I always use a little bit of tubing because it's thicker and holds the springs better. In here, I always use 2 exhaust springs, not 1, 2 at once, because if one breaks or comes undone, you always have a second spring. Okay, it's just an added protection. You notice that the engine support in itself, it's a little bit rounded, but I had to grind a little bit in there because everything is so tight. Okay, here the center drive shaft, it goes so close to the engine. I was afraid it would touch it, so I just grinded a little bit, and now I know it doesn't. Everything is so tight. Here the chassis stiffener, it has a kind of a slot, so the shaft goes through it. The front the same thing. I love these brakes. They have springs. On the original RC8 didn't have springs, so I made some springs. So if you brake like this, the springs will push the brake pads apart, so you have absolutely no bind. This is a great kit. It went together very well. Just follow the manual and you'll be fine. One piece of advice, 2 pieces of advice I can give you right away. It's I believe one of the first things, if not the first, that the manual tells you to do is to assemble the shocks. You can assemble the shocks first, but do not mount them, do not put them on the car. Okay, don't do that. In a certain point also, it will tell you to screw the wing on the car. Don't do that. Okay, leave the wing off, leave the shocks off the car, because when you're assembling the car, you always need to check if everything it's not binding, if it's loose enough. It has to work free enough. Free is the word. Okay, and the wing will actually be in the way of doing a lot of stuff that you need to do in the car. Okay, so leave it off. It's it's fast. Just put it on the end. The shocks the same thing in the end. I mostly follow the stock setup with a few changes, as I told you. Also, I really liked this I don't know if I like very much the fact that the pinion is open, because there's all the possibility of some dirt getting in. But the clutch in itself, it's really cool. You have 4 points of contact, 2 of them aluminum, 2 carbon. 0.90 springs on the carbon, exactly, and 0.95 springs in the aluminum, which makes sense because aluminum is heavier, so you would need thicker springs to actually make them open more or less at the same time as the carbon. um, and basically that's it. The side guards, they screw from the top. That's really nice. Many cars will screw them from the bottom, and you'll start to tighten them, and suddenly you make a little bit more torque, and there goes the plastic. This one actually screws in the car. I use a little bit of Loctite, so it's secure. I'm a little bit of a Loctite nut guy, not in the sense that I use a lot, but I use it even in situations that they are not required. For example, this nut here, this is an eye lock. I use just a little drop of Loctite just to make sure it's well tight. Okay, it won't come undone, because with time the plastic of the nylock will wear out. I do the same thing on the nylocks that you fit inside the chassis stiffeners, just to make sure everything is well secured. And basically that's it. I'm thinking of maybe buying the carbon stiffeners for the arms, because as I told you, my track, or the track that I practice on, has a lot of bite, so I might benefit from it. Telling you a little bit more about the boxes. No, I was telling you about that I seal them with silicone. Why did I do that? I always have the habit of sealing things with silicone. When you find the adversive weather conditions, when it's raining a lot, this is what connects the car to you. You use the radio, and you have receiver and servo plugs in here, and water and electronics usually don't mix well. I also seal the servos. You can see there, these servos, I know you have plastic tops, aluminum bodies, and plastic bottoms, so I also seal them with silicone to further waterproof them, or at least make them resistant to water. The receiver inside, I use a little bit of electric tape around the servo plugs, the ones that go on the pins, so they won't come undone. After that, I put them inside a balloon. I use silicone on the tip of the balloon. I use the zip tie, so they are watertight. I have little bits of sponge in here, so everything is well protected and will absorb the shocks. Those are also have a little bit of silicone. Even the cap on the antenna, I put a little bit of silicone to seal it, and even in here. Everything is watertight. I don't use the grommets that come in the kit, the little rubber grommets. I just fill everything in with silicone, because I basically don't need to access inside of the box. I have a 2500 milliamp hour battery, and that will last me for a long time. Practice sessions, I use this balance plug and a checker to check the voltage of the battery. I'll charge a little bit between practice rounds if I have to, but I'll have a lot of energy. This will be more than enough to last for a long main. In the track I practice on, they have these little trophies, these little cups where everyone gets to race long mains and have fun. So I'm not that huge of a pilot. I've been away from the hobby for a long time, so I'm really basically looking to have fun. So this will be more than enough. Oh, I'm just remembering something very important. On the arms, there is a little bit of play in here, if you notice. So can you see? So there is a little bit of play in here and in there. It's supposed to be like that. If you are, uncomfortable, you can have, very small, very thin shims, but the arms are supposed to have a little play, because in dirty tracks with a lot of dirt, loose dirt will get in the way, in there, and the arms have to move freely. There is also just, a little bit of play. The manual basically tells you to use, some spacers in here that in total are 3.9 millimeters, but there's nothing wrong in using 4 millimeters, because it's usually a 2 millimeter spacer, a 1 millimeter and 0.9. That's no problem in putting, instead of a 0.9, a 1 millimeter or something like that, as long as the arms are, free to move. I had to make a little shim to put in here and in here, because I'm using, a little different configuration, and the arms, the way, they fit, they're a little bit more angled. So the standard, shim, it's a little bit wider, it's 1 millimeter, and because of that angle, the arms would get, they would get stuck, they wouldn't move freely. So I just used a little bit of plastic from trees, that when you are taking the pieces from the trees out, they have this little rectangles. Usually one of them is a number, that's the run part number, because if there's something wrong with a plastic part, they know to what batch it belongs to, so they can correct it quite easily. So there's one of those little rectangles, and usually another one that is empty. I just cut one of those, just cut the corners, just did little chims, just used a little bit of sandpaper to sand it out to the thickness I wanted, until the arms were actually free, and it's fine. Basically, that's the only thing I had to improvise. The kit is beautiful. I think the color of this head of the Rossi, fits quite well with the theme of the car. The servos, the body, of the servo is also blue aluminum, so they also fit the theme of the car. I always like to use a little bit of pink. I'm thinking to use also this combination of colors to paint my body. Eventually I'll show it up too. And basically that's it. It's a fine kit, you can't go wrong with it. One final huge tip that I'll give you. You see how free this is? I can roll it, very easily. Look at this. Okay. Besides, of course, setting the mesh right between your opinions on differentials and the crowns of the differentials. Just break in the car and check again, because they might loosen up a bit. One big advice I can give you. Oh, and I just love the ball bearings on this car, because one side you have the rubber, and you always wear the rubber to the outside. So in here you have two ball bearings. So use the rubber to this side, and the other ball bearing the rubber to that side. Okay. Leaving the metal always on the inside of this. For example, we have this little screw here that you can take out. Just put a needle with oil, and you just oil the bearings from the inside. This is a really cool detail. I love this. Don't use the ball bearings as they come out of the kit. I'm sorry. Just use the greaser, a lot of the greaser. Take all the grease out. The ball bearings come with a lot of grease. Grease is great for protection. The bearings will last you a long time, but they will also not let the drivetrain move freely. Okay. I'm sorry. So grease them all out. They will, be really, really, really loose. They will work out great, and just use, some thin oil, some thin ball bearing oil, and oil again, you know, the bearings. This is the disadvantage of course, your ball bearing is not lasting as long, but it will still last a long time. You just have to really take care of them, you know. Every once in a while, just put a little bit of oil on the bearings. Every, you know, long session you do on the track, you just put a little bit of oil in them. Sometimes you might need to disassemble a few things to get to the bearings. Better to put a little bit of oil. But if you take care of them, you know, they will last you a long time. Just look at the bearings and think of them almost as they were, you know, the air filter. If you want to keep your engine healthy, you have to change your air filter a lot of times. You have to be careful with dirt, and the engine will last for a long time. You know, it's kind of like a consumable. I don't know if a lot of people will agree with me, but I also consider, you know, to be a consumable the glow plug. If I'm in an important race, the glow plug might be working, you know, fine, but you will never know when it will fail, and it might fail, and it will fail in a long main. So just take that glow plug out. You know, we don't need to throw it to the trash, and just put it away, insert a new one. You know, the old glow plug, if it's still working fine, you can use it to practice, no problem. If during practice, you know, the engine just shuts off, that's no problem. Just put it working again, and if it doesn't work, you know, it's the plug, it's definitely time to take it to the trash. But in the long mains, just put a new plug just to be safe. So I consider this to be kind of like a consumable, cheap item. Nowadays glow plugs are very cheap, especially OS ones. So consumable, and the bearings are almost consumable. I have a lot of bearings here, so I'm just gonna show you. So, you know, I just bought a lot of bearings. No, more bearings, even more bearings, more bearings, even more bearings, and I still have a lot of bearings from my original RC8. So this is kind of like a consumable to me. I really don't care about the bearings. The car needs to be loose to work well. You know, just to let it flow. Sometimes you have this really tricky section, and just, you know, blip the throttle and let the car go, and it will go, you know, by itself, just like you were on the throttle when you're not in the throttle. Having, you know, free bearings will give you more run time, okay? Because the car is looser, it's freer, so it will, you know, advance, go forward faster. This thing I was telling you about, you know, just flip the throttle and let the car go. You won't need to be always on the throttle, so you won't be using as many fuel, so you will save on fuel, bigger run times. The only disadvantage, if you can call it a disadvantage, is, you know, maybe having to change the bearings a little bit more frequently, you know. But this is really loose. Oh, I like this detail here, you know, universals in here. Why? Because you have, you know, a little bit of angle in here on the drive shaft, and the more angle you have, the less efficient will be the power transfer. So I liked the universals in the center, you know, and I like the convenience of having, you know, CVDs in the front and in the back, because, you know, you can just do maintenance, change the pins, and you basically have new CVDs. I like this a lot. You know, it's a fun car. I think it's a beautiful car. It's a nice car. It's the current champion of the world. So if you had any doubts about it, I don't think there's any further doubts. The car is good. There are other good cars, of course. I'm not bashing on any brand. I just like this one. Hope you like it too. A little bit on the rear. And see you around, guys. Thank you for watching the video. This is Bruno Gomes. Peace. Thank you.